SG. Today's going to be our last video in a 5-part series on financial literacy. Today we're going to be talking about how to manage debt effectively. Does your wallet ever feel a bit thin, maybe like it's on a permanent diet? Well, if it does, you're certainly not alone. Did you know that the average American today carries over $90,000 in debt? That's like owing the bank money for buying a new Tesla and taking a wonderful trip to the Bahamas. Now, when we talk about debt, it's really important to understand the different types of debt that we have, okay? And debt can really be broken down into two parts. There's good debt and there's bad debt. So let's talk about bad debt first. Bad debt is going to be your high interest rate debt. This is going to be stuff like credit cards, personal loans, or debt on a depreciating asset like an auto loan. Look, I have many clients that have bought a vehicle for $60,000. By the time that debt's paid off, that vehicle is only worth 25 or 30 grand. Now, when we talk about good debt, that's going to typically be mortgages or student loans. These are debts that are going to help you increase your wealth over time. Now, with good debt, if you take too much of it, it can still become bad debt. So for example, let's say you graduate from college, you're making $50,000 a year, but you have $200,000 in student loans. That might be an example of a bad debt. Now, on the opposite hand, let's say maybe you come out with $50,000 a year in student loans and your annual income is $75,000 per year. That's a much better position to be in. That's a greater return on investment. It's important to understand the consequences of carrying large debt loads. Number one, we have to pay high interest rates. Credit cards and personal loans are typically averaging around 30% interest these days. So that means for every $1,000 you borrow, you're paying $300 a year just in interest to borrow that money. For many people, they think paying the minimums on credit cards is sufficient, that's totally fine. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The way credit card payments are designed, they're designed to be a trap. So if you're not careful, if you're just making those minimum payments, you're going to fall into this trap and it's going to be very, very difficult to get out of. In fact, for the average credit card, it's going to take years to pay it off if you're paying the minimum payments. Case in point, let's say you have a credit card today with a balance of $10,000 at an 18% interest rate. And by the way, 18% is actually a pretty good interest rate in today's environment. Paying the minimum on that credit card is probably going to take you around 28 years to pay that credit card off. Again, let me say that again. Pay the minimum, you can probably take you around 28 years to pay off that credit card. Now, with credit cards and high debt loads, that creates a lot of stress and anxiety, okay? It can be difficult to keep up with all those payments. So you're going to feel trapped, or you're going to feel maybe like a hamster on a hamster wheel where you feel like you can't get off, because if you do, you're just going to find yourself in a really bad spot. So along with the stress and anxiety of carrying a lot of debt, it's also going to lower your credit score. The more debt you have, the lower the credit score becomes. And remember, a bad credit score is kind of like a bad reputation, right? It'd be similar to someone that's seen as a plant killer in a gardening club. And look, the stuff that we're talking about today applies to anyone that's making a little bit of money or someone that's making a lot of money. I have a client that's an attorney, has over $50,000 in credit card debt. How did they get there? By not following a budget, not building an emergency fund, making the same mistakes that anybody else makes. And the challenge with when you're making a lot of money is if you're not doing the right things, you can dig yourself an even deeper hole that's even more difficult to get out of. So what happens if you're someone that is in that situation where you've dug yourself a deep hole with a lot of debt and you're trying to get out of that? What are the steps? Well, number one, we want to assess the situation, okay? We want to take a notepad or an Excel sheet and we want to start writing down all our debts. We want to look at the amount, the interest rate, and the type of debt, all right? The second thing that we need to do to get out of debt is we need to create a budget, okay? Think of your budget as a diet plan for your finances, or just trying to cut the calories of unnecessary spending. This is just going to give you more money to pay off the debts faster. All right, the third thing that we need to do is we need to figure out the best way to pay off that debt effectively. There's really one of two strategies that we can use. For most individuals, they end up using the snowball method. The snowball method is where we try and start with the smallest debt, pay that off, and we work our way up to the largest debt. This works really well for two reasons. Number one, there's many people that have lots of different debts out there. I have lots of clients that have had 6, 7, 8, 10 different debts. If you have 2 or 3 credit cards, 2 student loans, a mortgage, an auto loan, all that is really hard to keep track of and can get very disorienting. So paying off the smallest balance first allows you to begin to reduce the number of debts that you have. Now, secondly, from a psychological perspective, we like to be rewarded for our behaviors, right? So when you pay off that smallest debt, it's the easiest one to pay off. It'll be paid off the fastest. That's going to put some wind in your sail, right? You're being rewarded for your behavior, and that's going to help motivate you to pay off the next debt. So when we're using the snowball method, what we're doing is paying the minimum payments on all the other debts, and we're taking all that extra money and putting that into the first debt, that smallest debt that we're paying off. Once that debt is paid off, the money that was going into the smallest debt, we're now applying that same payment to the second smallest debt. And we just work our way up to where we finally get to the largest debt load. Now the other strategy, and this works best if you're trying to pay off the debts fastest, or if you have just a few numbers of debts. Maybe you have just a credit card and an auto loan that you're trying to pay off. Well, here we want to use the Avalanche method. With the Avalanche method, what we're trying to do is paying off the highest interest rates first. By paying off that highest interest rate, what we're doing is we'll be paying less interest over time, allowing us to pay down the debts the fastest. So while this is the fastest way to pay down debt, for someone that's just starting out or someone that's overwhelmed, I'd recommend to start with the snowball method. You can always switch to the Avalanche method later on. Now look, sometimes we get overwhelmed or we're just not able to climb out of the hole on our own. If that's the case, it's okay to seek professional help. Find a financial advisor or a credit counseling. These individuals are trained and they can help you get out of the debt effectively. Remember, sometimes even heroes need sidekicks. Now, when we talk about the best way to manage debt, the absolute best thing is preventative care. Okay? Think of it like going to the doctors, right? If we can get a preventative treatment, something that's going to stop us from getting sick, that's the best course of action to take. It's the same thing with managing our finances. How do we do this? Well, number one, we live within our means. We want to spend less than what we bring home. So if you're bringing home $2,000 a month, spend $1,500 or less. Give yourself a cushion there so you can build that emergency fund. Okay, with an emergency fund, we want to have about 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. This is just when life happens, right? We're going to hit a bump in the road. We just want to be able to handle that without taking on more debt. The third thing we want to do is we actually want to use credit cards effectively. Now, I said credit cards can be bad if they're not used correctly, right? At the end of the day, a credit card is just a tool. Are we using it the correct way or the wrong way? If we're using it the correct way, a credit card can actually help you build your wealth over time. You know, for example, if you have a credit card with a good rewards program, what you want to do is you want to use your credit card for all your purchases and then pay that credit card off each month. Remember, credit cards have a grace period. It could be 20, 25, 30 days, whatever the case is. But during that grace period, you don't start accruing interest. So if you use your credit card for the rewards and then pay it off each month, that's going to help raise your credit score. That's going to help you accumulate rewards. And that's a great tool to use. I mean, for myself, I'm taking a 10-day vacation this summer with my family of 4. The flights, the hotel, the car rentals, everything's being paid for by our credit card points. So it's a great tool to use if you're doing it correctly. The last thing you want to do is you want to keep educating yourself financially. The more you learn about how to handle your finances, the better financial decisions you're going to make. Think of this as kind of Hogwarts, but for your wallet. If you apply the information discussed in this video, you're going to be light years ahead of your peers. Remember, debt is the villain, you're the hero in this story. Don't let debt be your kryptonite. Start your path to financial freedom now. Until next time, may your wallets be full and your debts be zero. Cheers.